Bueno, pues buenos días, buenas tardes, depende de dónde estéis. Buenos días a todos los que estéis en Latinoamérica y buenas tardes a todos los que estáis aquí en España o en Europa. Yo soy Daniel y estaré coordinando el webinar de hoy. Bueno, pues bienvenidos a un nuevo webinar de los que organizamos conjuntamente IT Latino y Technology Evaluation Centers. En este caso, bueno, pues como sabéis, el webinar es en inglés, ya os lo aviso, aunque podréis plantear, si tenéis alguna duda, las preguntas en español, porque tenemos bueno, a una persona traduciendo, Victoria, desde Canadá, que nos ayudará en cualquier cuestión relativa al idioma. Bueno, ya sabéis que hoy vamos a hablar de Enterprise Architecture. Tenemos para ello a Mehdi. Mehdi, you are in Montreal, isn't it?
Yes.
Ok. Mehdi está en Montreal y nos va a hablar, él es CTO de Technology Evaluation Centers. Os voy a decir un par de cuestiones logísticas. Estaremos aproximadamente unos 40 minutos o media hora de presentación por parte de Mehdi y luego haremos un turno de preguntas o comentarios. Animaros a participar. Podéis hacerlo vía micrófono directamente. El webinar se está grabando y recibiréis la grabación del mismo prácticamente al finalizar. Bueno, pues ya estamos viendo ahí la pantalla de Mehdi. Como os he dicho, él es CTO de Technology Evaluation Centers. Mehdi, the stage is yours.
Buenos dias a todos. Unfortunately, this is where my Spanish ends. So I'll switch to English. I guess if there is any questions, you guys can ask in Spanish, and there are translators, so we can answer them as required. So the subject of the webinar today is the enterprise architecture and in the terms of the digital transformation. So we're going to start by, talking about why do people actually need to go through a digital transformation, and as an enabler of that, what does the architecture review and the IT transformation as a platform should look like, and what stages any organization or company should go through. And then we're going to touch a little bit about our step-by-step process in redesigning the architecture of your organization in terms of the IT platforms. And how do you then align these architectures to the business objectives? And at the end, we're talking about some, parameters that has to be included in your roadmap when it comes to the digital transformation. And then we end that with questions and answers. Very briefly, just gonna talk about our company, who we are, just to put it into context, as we are a global consulting company and advisory service provider. We are totally independent and impartial. We don't represent vendors or any affiliations with vendors or suppliers in the area. We focus mainly on software selection and platform selection, and we are basically one of the leaders in the evaluation and selection in the market, and we operate globally. We have over 600 projects in the last 5 years. Big and small organizations come to us with their selections of the platforms and evaluation of what they need in terms of business processes. We are totally working with all kinds of industries. We don't have a specific industry in mind. Our methodology, as you will see a little bit down the road, is really tailored about getting companies what they want, rather than they buy into what the vendors are actually selling. So our company has been in business since 1993, so we have a good experience from the start of the enterprise applications evolution. With that being said, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the digital transformations and why companies even have to go through a digital transformation. Now, of course, this is a good buzzword and a topic that people think that because I have this buzzword that is coming up, like a digital transformation, everybody has to jump on it. But your company and your organization really has to have a good reason to embark in such a project and redesigning or restructuring their IT platforms. There are majorly 3 different categories of reasons that I could think of. Some companies have strategic reasons, some have some tactical reasons, and there is also technical reasons to do so. Some of the examples of why strategically you need to have or you need to go through this kind of transformation is to, for example, getting your new operating strategies in place, or maybe you're expanding your market. You want to be a global player in what you're offering as a service or a product to your market. You want to basically enable growth within your organization. So some companies have grown to a stage where their current platforms and the current technologies are not sufficient for the next stage of the growth. So these are good reasons to actually look at your platforms and try to understand what the platform can provide in order to support your growth. The other reasons strategically could be to extend your supply and demand chain, which is the suppliers could be demanding you to change the way you operate, or in order to capture more of the market, you need to do certain changes in the way that you operate, and hence have platforms to support it. Another very good reason strategically is to increase the customer satisfaction, which is in the day and age that we are, competition is tough, and you need to have good customer service, good customer support, and good products to have the clients coming back and asking for more of your service or products. Of course, getting into new territories and become more competitive in general could be good strategic reasons for you to do that. Now, what could give you that strategic advantage? As an example, you can enable an ERP implementation within your organization if your current ERP or your current enterprise application is not supporting all of these aspects. Now, on the tactical reasons, you may want to reduce, and it is always true that all organizations, they always want to reduce cost and improve productivity within the organization. Also, you may want to have more flexibility in your operating procedures and processes. Another good tactical reason is integrating your business processes and making sure that they are working hand in hand, so your internal processes are not bogged down with bottlenecks or manual processes. There might be reasons for requiring a new platform because you did acquisitions and there are multiple systems. You need to basically merge and integrate these, or you simply want to standardize your business processes. Another good tactical reason is facilitate regulatory compliance. These are all things that when the companies are growing, they may not be they may not be compliant with all the regulatory requirements. As they grow, they may actually have to put systems in place to actually make sure that things are not going out of hand. And of course, improve specific business processes. That is in the niche way of doing things. You may want to have a very good tactical reason to say, okay, I want to improve my, I don't know, ordering or purchasing system. One of the examples of this is in implementation, that you can close the gap between various processes. If there are bottlenecks or gaps between processes, there are manual transactions that has to take one process output and put it into another process's input. So that could be a good reason for you to go through a digital transformation and system architecture review. Now, there are also technical reasons where you actually have to do that. And most often people start with technical reasons, and companies usually have these multiple systems that they have different platforms. They're working sometimes together, sometimes they're not working so good together. So that could constitute the reason for you guys to want to switch platforms or look at your current platforms. You want to have improved quality and visibility in your information and the data. You wish to have modernized technology infrastructure in terms of hardware, software, and other peripherals that goes with your system. You may want to have better reporting on your data, and you want to have enabling analytics and more trustworthy analytics with certain data silos that you may have currently in your organization. Of course, another tactical reason is moving to the cloud, which is nowadays is one of the hot topics that you may want to look at, getting rid of your data centers, getting rid of your hardware and everything else, and move all your software platforms to the cloud. Now, as a rule of thumb, I would say that any of these reasons by themselves cannot be a good, indicator that you need to actually embark in a big project. I would say you have to have a good strategic or tactical reason to move to a new platform. Of course, technical reasons and technical support of those platforms would follow. So as I said, you need to have compelling reasons, both strategically and tactically, in terms of operating your organization, operations in your organization, to be able to go into these projects. Technical reasons by themselves, unless you basically have a really, really broken system, may not be a good reason to go towards a big change within your organization. Now, having said that, again, when I'm talking about if you have a really broken technical systems, what are the key signals in which that you can actually say, okay, my system is completely broken, and that I have to actually move on to the next version of our enterprise application, or I have to review my architecture. So basically, the first thing is if you somehow by strategically and within your organization, you have decided to buy a new software application for your enterprise. Another good reason could be that you have multiple systems that have duplication in terms of processes, sometimes overlapping processes, sometimes overlapping data structures, where the data is stored in silos and or overlapping information and multiple data entries and so on. If you're using a lot of Excel sheets within your operations, that means that generally your platform is not coping with the business requirements and needs. So that means that you need to have a review of your current process. And another good reason is like you have a lot of problems with your current system. It's either old, it's buggy and it's crashing, or it doesn't comply with the current technologies that it's out there. The other ones that we talked about, which are basically part of your strategic and tactical reasons, which is you want to have data quality, integration, and visibility within your reporting. And another good way of looking at your overall health of your system is that we suggest that every 5 to 7 years, you need to have a review of your system. It's just like when you go to the doctors once a year to just see if everything is working fine. You need to actually have an overview of your system going forward. And of course, if there are changes in your business, mergers, acquisitions, and sizable growth in your company, and what you get out of the architectural review is to be able to map out all your current business processes and enterprise applications that support those processes. You can then, as a result of that review, get a target enterprise architecture and build an IT master plan or enterprise master plan for you to work towards getting that plan in place to achieve what we were just talking about. Now, in terms of stages where your digital transformation has to go through, is there are many stages that you have to go through before you actually have a digital transformation implemented or an enterprise or application fully implemented within your organization. You have to first and foremost assess your business processes and discover the functional requirements that you have in terms of supporting those business processes. And then you have to go to the market in terms of what is feasible from your current systems and the systems that are out there that can actually fill in the gaps and improve your business processes. And based on those two factors, what's available and what you have, you can design a new system architecture. With that new system architecture, you can then map your current functionality that you required into that system architecture, and that's where you actually define your digital transformation project scope, and you can also find out the impact of that new system or new architecture on your current applications and your current platforms. Once you define that impact, then you define a roadmap to take you from where you are today to where you're going to be in the future with the new system and the new architecture. And at that point, you can then really get into a system selection and go into implementation. I can pause here if there are any questions, or I can move on. So depending on feedback.
Mehdi, don't worry. If there is any question, I will advise you. Okay,
okay.
I will inform you.
Okay, thank you. So now the different stages now in a little bit more detail on how we actually do this when it comes to a company that typically we or any other advisory firm should be working with is that you start with the requirements gathering process. Now, this is basically talking to all the stakeholders within your organization. And we are talking about finance, HR, operations, production, purchasing, inventory. Depending on your business, you may have different stakeholders and within your organization. Basically, you need to talk to all the stakeholders, talk to all the business process owners, and find out what is important for them and what they do on a regular basis and a daily work that they do during the processes. This allows you to come up with a very high-level process requirements, and at the same time, it allows you to map out your current system architecture, which includes any legacy ERP or any other enterprise applications you have, all the manual and Excel forms that you have within your organization, any homemade systems that are either add-on to your legacy system or add-on to your enterprise applications, or just simply doing simple tasks of one thing or the other. And any other system that is vital to your operations, you discover all of those. Now, it's very important that we don't get into too much redesign of the processes at this stage, and you need to avoid redesign or re-engineering your processes at this stage, because the redesign or the change in the processes, it should be enabled by implementing your enterprise application. So avoid getting into too much detail on the processes. You have to stay on top and get the main processes and main activities of your operations. But that will give you a consolidated FRS, which is, in our terminology, is referring to functional requirements set. That is the functions that you need from your applications to be able to support your processes. Now, once I have this list of functions and features that enables all of my processes within the organization, I can then go to a very, very brief discovery with the vendors and products that are in the market. And based on that, I can consolidate into a new enterprise architecture. I will show you the examples of what a new and old architecture would look like. Now that I have my new enterprise architectures, there could be multiple options of that. Then I can devise into a plan a new strategic digital transformation master plan, which takes into account all of my processes, all the functional requirements I have, what's available out there in terms of the vendors and products that are able to support our requirements and needs, and then different alternatives that I have in terms of the architecture. Taking all into account, we can then create a master plan, and then based on that master plan, taking into account your current architecture, you can define a roadmap that takes you from where you are to where you're going to be. The roadmap should define the scope of new applications, the commissioning of the old applications. All of that is going to be summarized in your roadmap. And once you have that, you can then go into a selection of the process. So basically, you get into product and system integrator evaluation. You go through demos and analysis and contract negotiation based on what you define in your transformation master plan. Now, as I was mentioning before, what does the current and future landscape architecture looks like? So at at the end of the discovery sessions, you usually end up with a chart or a diagram that represents your processes and your platforms. So it could be legacy 1, legacy 2, a billing system, an HR system, a CRM system, and system X and system Y, which are really tailor-made applications for this organization. Based on the requirements, and if you look at this diagram, you already know that there are some overlaps in terms of processes. So for example, some of the billing functionality is in legacy 2, and some of the billing functionality is in the billing system that you have separately. The customer information is in the legacy 1, and then some of that could be transferred into CRM because it has sales and marketing information. So basically, this is what a new target application landscape should look like. By merging all the processes into that are similar, or they can be lived, they can be living in a single application, we put them all into under one umbrella, and we say, okay, to transform your platform, you need an ERP system that includes all of these processes. You also can expand the functionality of your current CRM system and include customer service as on top of marketing and sales. That way, you have one integrated system for dealing with your customers. And system X and Y, which are very, very specific to your business, can also be part of the new architecture. So there is no restriction in terms of trying to put everything into one system. So we really encourage people not to do integration or basically getting rid of systems for the sake of reducing the number of systems, but it has to have absolute sense, and also there has to be vendors that can support that kind of functionality within your, for example, ERP or CRM systems. So once you have your target business application landscape, you will then have to have a roadmap, which takes you from where you are to where you're going to be in terms of the system change and the where you're going to be in the overall or in the long term. Now, things that you need to consider in your roadmap is that what is the functional scope of the new application? As I was mentioning before in the previous slide, you need to really define the scope and communicate that with your users to set the expectations properly from the get-go and to avoid scope creep in your project. So you have to really define the scope properly and you stick to it. So once you define the scope, you cannot change it, and you have to do all the work in advance to make sure that you are taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of in the planning phase. And the other thing is that you need to consider in your roadmap is that if there are areas in which that your current or the future architecture with the applications cannot cover, how do you plan to fill those? So as I mentioned in the previous slide, so if there are system X and Y that are very niche applications for your operations, whether you keep them or replace them, you have to decide that right then. You cannot just leave holes in your process going forward. And the other very important part of the roadmap is that which part of your legacy systems or which legacy systems are going to survive this transformation, and which ones are the ones that are not. So for the ones that are going to stay, how are you going to integrate them into the new system? It has to be defined. And also, if they are not surviving this transformation, what are you going to do with the data, and how are you going to transform and keep your history into the new world or your new platform? Now, very important is that what is the total estimated cost of this transformation? These are things that you have to address during the roadmap. You don't want to have surprises and thinking that you're going to start a project and you're going to have $1 million to spend, and by the end of the day you have to go to the management and the board and ask for more money, and you end up with spending $10 million. This is one of the reasons where projects fail, and usually the board are not susceptible to increases like that. So they would like to have all that information beforehand. Of course, at the earlier stages of your project, your estimates are not that accurate, of course, and you're going to have maybe 20, 30, 40% margin, but you have to communicate that with your board. The same thing goes with the timing and how are you going to implement the application. How long is it going to take to implement and go through the transformation of your business on your platform? And also, what are the phases of the implementation? Are you going to do a big bang implementation and flip the switch in one day? Or are you going to do a phased approach to different modules and different processes? And at the end of the day, your management and the decision makers always are interested in the return on investment. So we would like to know, they would like to know how much money they're going to make if they spend how much money. So or what kind of savings they're going to have if they go through this process. So basically, if you can, within your roadmap, define the parameters in which you're going to bring savings and improvements in terms of dollar amounts to the management, and where those savings are going to come from, it's going to be a real easy decision for them to make and do the right investments within your project. I think I'm done with this. So if there are any questions, I'm good for that.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for your explanations. Sí, pasamos al turno de preguntas. Os recuerdo, podéis participar y os animamos a participar directamente vía micrófono. Si queréis participar vía micrófono, no vamos a ver la webcam, o sea que tranquilos, solo el micro. Lo que podéis hacer es levantar la mano accionando el botoncito levantar mano. Hay como un icono en el panel de control de GoToWebinar que pone levantar mano. Aquellos que queráis intervenir vía micrófono, os animamos a ello. Podéis hacerlo, levantar la mano accionando el icono levantar mano, que aparece, bueno, hay un iconito de levantar mano, y yo os abro el micrófono. Podéis plantear las preguntas en inglés o en español, ¿vale? Porque tenemos a Victoria, que está ahí al lado de Mehdi, y que nos haría de traducción. Podéis hacer las preguntas tanto en inglés como en español, como queráis. Ahí veo una mano levantada de Michael. A ver, Michael, te voy a abrir el micrófono. Hola, Michael.
¿Me oyen ahora?
Sí. Sí, perfecto, Michael. Te escuchamos. ¿Desde dónde nos llamas? Por favor, dinos el país.
De Cataluña, de cerca de Barcelona.
Perfecto. Adelante, Michael.
MAP. La pregunta es que, bueno, me ha parecido súper interesante el planteamiento.
Perdona, Michael, si quieres hacerla en inglés, creo que hablas inglés.
Okay. A very interesting presentation. Thanks very much. It was a pleasure to watch and very interesting. And one of my the first question would be, how do you think the sort of paradigms of Industry 4.0 would impact this sort of this sort of strategy of looking at your architecture? Does it impact at all, in your opinion, or is it something which is confined more to the factory floor, where you're getting all your sensor information and so on up above?
Yes, actually, these are the stuff that you need to take into account when you're going through your requirements gathering. So if your the current business processes or current requirements, let's say, can be improved by adopting some of these strategies, for sure, you have to take that into account. And at the same time, you, as I mentioned, you look at the market and see who is actually able to give you those kinds of strategies in terms of tracking and having lean manufacturing, or being zero industries as 3.0 or 2.0 or 4.0, whatever that is. So all of those come into play within your strategic building of your master plan. So if we are not recommending that you just buy into the buzzwords or the keywords. You have to look at what does that actually give you, and if it provides you with a strategic or tactical improvement in your processes, then by all means go for it.
Okay.
Ok, Michael, muchas gracias por tu intervención. Ok, vamos a ver, yo tenía aquí una pregunta, a ver si la encuentro. La tenía además, si queréis alguno que ha planteado la pregunta, vale, Radamés me levanta la mano también, perfecto. A ver, mientras voy buscando la otra pregunta. Hola, Radamés.
Hola. Hola, ¿qué tal están todos?
Hola, ¿qué tal, Radamés? ¿Desde dónde nos llamas?
De El Salvador.
Salvador, adelante. ¿Quieres plantear la pregunta en inglés o en español?
En español.
Perfecto. Victoria, estate atenta.
Hemos visto el proceso de transformación digital en esta presentación como algo, digamos, aislado. ¿Cómo interactúa el proceso de transformación digital con el proceso de planeación estratégica? Si cambia el proceso de planeación estratégica de las empresas de cara a la transformación digital.
He said he's seen how does it change if the strategy has changed with the processes that the organizations have done? Like, how is that going to impact the actual ¿Lo puedes repetir, por favor?
Sí.
Para estar claro.
A ver, Radamés.
¿Cómo cambia la planeación estratégica de cara a la transformación digital? La planeación estratégica de la empresa. Si sufre algún cambio con todos estos key features que hay.
A nivel de negocio general de la empresa, te refieres, ¿no?
General. Correcto.
O sea, ¿cuál es un poco Victoria, la integración entre los cambios que hay que hacer a nivel estratégico general de la empresa para adecuarse a la transformación digital?
To change it from the digital transformation, how does the strategic level change it for the digital transformation? They're trying to in-sync the strategic level to the digital.
So let me answer the way I understood it. So if we missed it in the translation, just you can probably ask again or clarify. So the way I understood is like you're saying that if I go through the digital transformation, how do I align my strategic or the business processes to that digital transformation? Is it a yes or no? And then I'll answer. If it's not, and I missed the missed the question, just let's clarify.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
So yeah, that's good. So basically, what we are saying and what companies, organizations should do is that you have to have a set goal. So the goal from the strategic point of view is, for example, capturing new markets or be more competitive in certain industries or certain target market. It could be, you know, acquiring new businesses or smaller companies or bigger companies. So all of these are going to basically dictate on how you're going to transform your platforms to support getting there. Once you actually acquire a new company, things will change. So probably you have to go through another transformation depending on what that result is going to be. So that's why we're saying that every 5 years, every 7 years, you have to redo this. That's on one end. The other end is there is always an organizational redesign and organization or process change that should happen in parallel with your digital transformation. So even if you're not acquiring new companies or you're not expanding dramatically, once you put in place your new architecture, so let's say that your master plan says that you need to buy a new ERP system. So that new ERP system comes with its own new way of doing things, best practices for doing certain processes within your organization. Now you have to transform your internal processes and even sometimes your organizational design, your hierarchies, your departments has to be realigned with your plan. So some companies, big or small, they actually do two parallel transformation projects. One is the digital transformation, which represents their IT platforms. The other one is organizational redesign, which makes the organization in general much leaner and more adapted to the platform that comes in. And the other way is during the implementation, you have to go through the changes within your processes to take advantage of the best practices that the vendors are actually providing to you. So there are, as I mentioned here, like there are 3 different approaches that you can take, and they're not mutually exclusive. In many organizations, you have to go through all 3. You know, you may have to redesign your organizational chart and you know, departments, and for sure you have to change the way you do things in terms of processes and adopting new best practices. I don't know if that answers your question.
Ok, bueno, si tienes alguna cosa más, Radamés, me levantas la mano otra vez y yo te abro el micro sin problema. Stewart, has hecho una pregunta bastante larga, Stewart Coronado. Si quieres hacerla vía micrófono, así la haces tú directamente, ya sea en español o en inglés, sería perfecto. Stewart Coronado. Mientras tanto, yo quiero, I want to make you a question, Mehdi. Do you think that ERP still is a key part in the digital transformation plan? I mean, you have to think about digital ERP in order to at least start your transformation, your digital transformation?
Yeah, very good question. And, you know, if you notice during my presentation, I usually refer to enterprise applications. So within our, you know, experience and the companies that we deal with, we do not want to encourage or put a name on the systems as ERP as a traditional ERP, because currently lots of these applications have functionality that is not generally associated with traditional ERP packages. So you can have lots of CRM functionality, supply chain functionality, analytics, BI are integrated now within the enterprise application. So we tend to look at the enterprise as an entity that requires a platform, as much as possible, an integrated platform and a single solution. Now, whether you call that system an ERP system, or you want to call it System X or System Y, I don't really think that should be the subject of discussion. It should be based on processes, and and if you look at the current way that the vendors even actually marketing their products, they're not calling it a pure ERP anymore, and we are getting into an area that is more industry-based, enterprise applications, or in general, we're talking systems that can support your functionality overall. We call it enterprise application, so not necessarily ERP in a traditional knowledge or traditional definition.
Okay, I have another question here. What services does tech offer in this matter, because we know that tech is, okay, you help companies to select software, okay, but on the side of digital transformation in general, what do you offer?
Okay, we actually offer the entire scope of what I explained in this presentation. We have services that allows you to redesign your architecture. We have services that allows you to come up with the enterprise architecture master plan. And we do ROI analysis. We do cost estimation. We do project definition and scope definitions. Everything that I explained in this presentation, we can actually go from start of, let me just put it back here. So we can start from requirements gathering in this slide all the way to the end, which is the contract and price negotiation, and beyond that. So after the contract is signed with the vendors, we usually participate in terms of being an advisor in the implementation for the client, on behalf of the client, to make sure that the implementation goes according to the plan. So our very demanding service right at the beginning for this presentation is actually the requirements gathering, and step number 2, which is the definition of the current processes and the architecture, which is a very, very critical part of this process. We cover the entire scope.
Okay. Okay, we have a question from Stewart about security concerns. I mean, once, as the name says, a company transforms in digital, okay, you have also digital security concerns. I mean, the cybersecurity is with the transformation, the digital transformation, another key question, isn't it?
Of course, and this is not something that is new, basically. Like, we are not saying that the companies that go through this process, they have no digital data and they don't have any data currently. Any company, any organization these days, they have all their information some way or the other on a digital platform. As where that data is stored and how it's being accessed is the key part of creating that security for the data. So in a way, going through an exercise like this allows you to identify where your data is stored, who has access to it, and why, and how do you store and bring all the data together into a single or more secure platform or place to store it. It becomes part of this process as well. So I don't think this adds any concerns to the security. It actually alleviates any concerns that you may actually have with your current structure. So if you have data that is laying around in Excel sheets, for example, today, they're not very secure. Anybody can have the data that is stored on, hard drives or Excel sheets or any other form of documents, easily accessible, or I would say more easily accessible than something that is in a secure platform that only certain people have access to. So yes, data and cybersecurity is a huge concern for all the organizations, but I think going through a process like this will help you eliminate some of the risks at the same time.
Okay, I have another question. As data is in the digital in all this digital transformation evolution is critical. Okay, from tech, do you have any, or from your side directly, do you have any advice about the data warehouse or data lakes that companies should build to confront this digital transformation? I mean, do you have some kind of advice about the new data lakes or data warehouse that companies should build to confront or to evolution in the digital transformation?
Yeah, in particular, if you're talking about a specific application or recommendation, it really depends on the needs and requirements. But generally speaking, my recommendation or our recommendation as consultants is that you need to put all your data, first of all, clean your data, get rid of anything that is not worthy in keeping, or there's duplications, or there are data that are in silos. Bring them together, cleanse them, and make sure that they are valid, and then store them in a secure platform, and where you can actually then run analytics if that's the goal. Like, again, depends on the goal that you have. If you want to run analytics on the data, then you have to massage and make sure that the data is accommodating that requirements. But generally speaking, again, I'm leaning towards getting data on a secure cloud platforms, because no matter how you're thinking about your internal data centers or storage, you cannot beat the cloud infrastructure that is out there. So I would say that once you clean your data, once you gather all your information, trust it to a trustworthy cloud provider, service provider.
Muy bien. Bueno, pues thank you very much, Mehdi, for your time.
Thank you.
Y bueno, vamos a dar por finalizado. No veo ninguna mano más levantada. Estamos en la hora. Tampoco veo ninguna pregunta más. Así que, bueno, agradeceros mucho el haber participado con nosotros. Estar atentos a próximos webinars que estamos organizando en conjunto, Technology Evaluation Centers y IT Latino, en 3 lenguas además. Estamos haciendo webinars en español, en inglés y en portugués también, ¿vale? Estamos también iniciando webinars en portugués junto con Technology Evaluation Centers. Cualquier duda o cuestión que tengáis sobre Technology Evaluation Centers, podéis planteárnoslas en info@dacontenidos.com, cualquier comentario también, y serán bien recibidas. Así que nada más. También, Victoria, muchísimas gracias por habernos ayudado ahí un poco en las traducciones. Ya recibiréis el vídeo del webinar. Así que nada más. Yo desde Sant Cugat del Vallès, aquí en el norte de Barcelona, en España, me despido y hasta la próxima. Adiós. Un saludo.
Adiós, gracias.
Adiós.